Thank you. So that you will know, the meeting is being live streamed. That information was published by our communications department. Mr. Gant is joining us on that stream in the Google Meet so that the full board is indeed present. That brings us to item number 8 on the agenda, and I'll recognize Dr. Christina Melton for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Cates. Board members, thank you for this opportunity. This is to offer the 5th update regarding reopening and reentry for the 2021 school year. As we get started for this evening, I'd like to thank a variety of people, our reentry team, some of whom are in the audience this evening, others are likely listening in. I'd like to thank our teachers and our staff. They have continued to show their flexibility and their commitment to our students. So many staff members have made this reentry operation available. I'll look at facility changes in any of our buildings. Our facility staff, to include our facility supervisors, our principals, our administrators, have been directly involved with our operations. I thank our transportation staff for their continued flexibility of cleaning and pickup and organization. I thank our nutrition staff for the number of meals they've served, whether we've been closed by executive order or operational as we've done for last week and into this. The things that they have done to get us prepared are just like none other. They have kept our students at the center of what we're doing. I thank our security and safety officers for all the planning they put into this, of how to make sure that our students are physically safe in a brand new physical environment and new operations. I thank our technology staff, the number of devices that they are managing and operating for our staff, for our students, the support they've given. They continue to show their interest and their support to make sure the mission of School District 5 is active and operational. Our instructional staff, the work they've continued to do to make sure that instructionally we're as best prepared as we can be, and the grace that our teachers continue to show and the courage they continue to articulate. I've said before, progression is not perfection, but we are making progress thanks to many determined, caring individuals to make sure we're at this place. I can't applaud our principals enough. Their leadership, their direct access to families and to students, our staff, the things that we're doing to try to make sure that this history that we write is one of positive record for all of our students. As we get ready to start tonight's presentation, I'll look towards the first slide. Sydney, if you could advance for me, please. Thank you. These principles you've seen 5 other times before. If you look around the circle here from principle 1 around to 5, the first principle, of course, is focused upon choices for our families to be able to make. The second principle is focused upon the well-being, the social emotional well-being. Our third on the right side of the screen is focused on our short-term and our long-term impact to student achievement. And then priority 4, principle 4, is of course related to my 5 priorities which the board has approved during my tenure as superintendent. And then the 5th principle, of course, is the flexibility and responsiveness with ever-changing dynamic situations of COVID-19. These principles have guided our work in addition to our strategic plan and the processes of School District 5. And because of that, we have this evening a variety of updates we'd like to offer to you. If you'll advance for me again, Sydney. Our reentry communications update, Ms. Goggins, our Director of Communications, is going to come forward. It's important that we put some connections with our story of highlights and overviews, as well as things that we've been working on to make sure that our community is aware of. Ms. Goggins.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. School District 5 started the school year last week, and though the start of this year looked different in some ways, in others it looked the same for our schools. We had students taking their very first steps into their educational journeys, while other students experienced their last first day of K through 12 school. We had dedicated school staff and office staff members ready to greet students and welcome them to the start of another school year in School District 5. And we had parents who documented their students' milestones, educational moments, sharing photos with us using the hashtag you see. You can see these photos and others at the hashtag D5 First Day. And while our students experienced their first days of school last week, the week prior to that, we welcomed new teachers who would soon experience their first days in the classroom, whether that be virtual or in person. The district held its second annual First and Five Teacher Shower as a drive-through event this year to welcome first-year teachers to School District 5. Our principals, district staff, and other school officials were on hand to make our teachers feel welcome and provide them with encouragement and supplies as they start the 2020-2021 school year. In addition to the first days of schools, we also opened offices in our district on August 31st with new safety measures in place. As we shared at the last board meeting, we provided signage and communications with parents and the public regarding our new front office protocols, and we're happy to report tonight that the new protocols are working well for our schools. And then finally, we wanted to share an update on communication projects that we informed you of at our last board meeting. Our reentry video projects concluded last week. Over the course of a few weeks, we shared 10 videos which received thousands of views. You can see the topics here that were covered on the screen, and again, these videos were meant to reiterate written communications we shared with parents and the public. We also continue to send out messages to parents, including a COVID communications guide last week. And we continue to communicate with our families pertinent information as we have updates and post that on our social media sites. And then finally, we know that now that our students and staff are back, our communications efforts will need to continue. We are now looking at PSA-style videos, including one on event safety messages that will be played at our athletic events, and other videos that will remind our staff of important safety measures in our schools. And as we've said before, communications was important before the pandemic and continues to be key. We will continue to find ways to engage our communities and provide them with the information and resources they need to help their students as we continue into the school year. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Harris for an update. Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Goggins, and to Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent, General Community. If you remember one thing from this very brief presentation that I'll make tonight, I'd like for you to remember this, that the COVID-19 positive cases and their applicable percentages of positive cases fluctuate and they vary on a daily, regular, and routine basis. Yet they remain consistently above the recommended levels supported by WHO, World Health Organization, CDC, Centers for Disease Control, as well as DHEC. And my purpose this evening is to share with you and the general public a snapshot of the public county level data for both Lexington and Richland counties. Now the situation is as follows. I have shared and we have attempted to share with you as the board at the Office of Planning and Administration began our efforts by tracking COVID-19 data by zip code and by county. However, we are currently tracking county-level data based on South Carolina DHEC's new online dashboard, Tableau, which is entitled the South Carolina County-Level Data for COVID-19. And this online dashboard provides a detailed and localized review of county data that reflects the impact of COVID-19 in South Carolina. So with that in mind, I want to begin with information that you would find if you had a chance to frequent the DHEC's website, information that's relative to a 2-week cumulative incident rate. And what that simply says to us is that the 2-week cumulative incident rate includes new cases that have been reported in the past 2 weeks. And we've opted to use August 26th through September 8th as our defining information that we would share with you tonight. And this information and the data that I will share, the numbers I share is per 100,000 people here in South Carolina, or in the various counties rather. And this rate does describe or enter to share with us COVID-19 information as it relates to those who are currently ill and those who are infectious and or accessing health care. Coupled with the incident report that I just shared with you, you would also find on the DHEC's website an incident legend. It looks very similar to this, very similar in color as well, and purposefully color-coded to identify the various areas or the various incident levels. You'll see a low incident level, those persons who are tested positive, 0 to 100 persons, again, out of 100,000, low incident rate, followed by moderate incident rate, moderately high incident, and then lastly, a high incident rate. Those are more than 300 cases per 100,000 persons. Specific to Lexington County, and we'll attack or try to attempt to address both of our counties. Lexington County is currently identified and classified as a moderately high rate of incidence here in Lexington County. On September 8th, and I'll continue to refer to that particular date, on September 8th, Lexington County had a positive case of 15.8% positive cases on September 8th. Now, what you would find follow, I took advantage of a 3-month period. I looked at June 8th through July 8th, July 8th through August 8th, and then again August 8th through September 8th. And on the left side here, you will see, and I'll read these numbers in case you could not see from the back. From June 8th through July 8th, there were 1,784 positive cases in Lexington County. July 8th through August 8th, 2,349 positive cases in Lexington County. And then August 8th through September 8th, 1,235 cases. Again, you keep in mind the varying and sundry holidays and things that are taking place in summertime, things where you can see how the numbers begin to fluctuate. Comparatively speaking, look at Richland County. Richland County has consistently maintained a high incident rate. Again, high incident rate refers to those cases where there are more than 300 persons per 100,000 in Richland County. And on September 8th, Richland County had a positive case rate of 27.7% cases. I use the same metrics here of June 8th through July 8th. Richland County had 2,682 cases tested positive. July 8th through August 8th, 4,385 cases were tested positive persons. And then August 8th through September 8th, 3,769 cases of persons who tested positive. Again, consistently reporting at a high incident rate of positive cases in Richland County. Now, I'll add to that as information, this is not shown here, but I'll add to this is that just a week ago, last Friday as a matter of fact, DHEC has begun reporting incidents bi-weekly based on school as well as district data. It's a school district data collection. And what we have found is that it identifies every school in every district across South Carolina and the number of incidents for either students and or staff, employees. And I would make certain that the community knows that when you refer to or you see Lexington Richland School District 5, know that it does include private and charter schools, and namely 3 in particular. Green Charter School, it does include, if cases should or were to be reported by students and or staff. Union Methodist Church Preschool, as well as Odyssey Online Learning, which is an online learning program in the Chapin area. So the end results, I'll give you a number of percentages and things to kind of take a look at regarding Lexington and Richland counties. I'll note that the end result, that WHO, CDC, as well as DHEC all agree that 5% is the benchmark to be used in terms of making localized decisions and determinations. So what are our next steps? Where do we go from here? We will continue to be consistent with our practice to date, and that is we will continue to monitor our data and its impact on School District 5, as well as make the most responsible, the most responsive, and the most reflective recommendations possible in order to ensure the safety and wellness and well-being of our students and our staff here in School District 5. With that having been said, I'm going to turn the remaining of the time over to Superintendent Melton.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. During the onset of my remarks, I made sure that I highlighted a few different groups. I deliberately held these till the end. We've had so many partnerships that have been strengthened during this time of operation that I'd like to say thank you to them publicly. I'd like to applaud our nurses and our social workers. We continue to experience things for the first time, and they continue to show their care and commitment to students and to families. I'd like to pause to say thank you to all of our staff. Our procurement office has been instrumental. Our communications office has been instrumental. Our human resources with benefits and the continuation of hiring. In so many ways, the operations of School District 5 has not been affected nor compromised. And of course, I need to thank our families, our parents, our guardians, and of course, our students. I've said consistently, the 2021 school year promises to be a marathon and not a sprint. We welcome feedback, we welcome the opportunity to listen, but understand we're trying to make decisions on information that has been ever-changing and dynamic. I've been consistent to compare this with a weather incident, but we do not have a forecasting indicator for this. There is no weather radar nor alert system. Instead, we go by the information that we have available. Many hoped that we would make an announcement this evening regarding October the 8th. We're simply not prepared for that. We are working towards an October the 8th announcement, a face-to-face or continuation of hybrid or something different. Our staff continues to work, and because of that continued work and continue waiting for data and updates and decision-making, it would be irresponsible for me to make any announcements right now that families would then make decisions prepared on, and then they not be able to actually do what we have suggested we are preparing for doing. So I ask our families to stay tuned, to stay connected with us, because communication is so critically important that we have the opportunity to keep you up to date and make sure that we can explain the things that we have going on in the School District 5's operation. In my board brief to the board, I use the quote of Samuel Johnson: "Great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance." I'd like to make sure that our board hears me say publicly and our community hears me go on record. Our staff of every position in School District 5 has shown perseverance. Our staff continues to show that we're focused on students, we're student-centered, and staff-supportive. We welcome feedback, we invite the opportunity for conversations, but we encourage you. Statements can lead to such adversary responses. We have teachers that feel like that there are some relationships that have been compromised because of some feedback that they're receiving. Our teachers have proven to stand ready and to be focused on our students. And I have to make sure that I pause to say to all of our employees on every school campus and every district facility, I am proud of the work we've done. It's not been perfect, but there has been commitment. Mr. Cates, I'll pause for any question from the board at this time.
Dr. Melton, I did have one point I heard, but I want to clarify, and it was from Dr. Harris. I understand that the numbers that are being reported for our district by DHEC, so if you looked and it said Lexington Richland 5 had an X number of cases among students and X number of cases amongst faculty or staff, that included the charter schools that was mentioned?
Yes,
so
sir.
That's not just Lexington Richland 5.
It is a Lexington Richland 5 community, not solely Lexington Richland 5 schools. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Other questions? Ms. Hammond?
Mine is really not a question. I spoke with Dr. Melton about this and Mr. Cates. In the spirit of communication and transparency, I'd really like to offer a motion that has to do with the reentry, which I felt would communicate to the public, if I might do so. I move we direct the superintendent to move forward with the reentry plan presented on July 23rd, which provided for face-to-face 5 days a week on October 8th. Furthermore, if there is evidence of an increase in COVID numbers within Lexington and Richland counties that may cause greater safety issues at that time, a revision can be made to the board, but only after the evidence is presented, discussed, and approved by the entire board.
Is there a second? Mr. Lovelace. Ms. Hammond, I'll give you the opportunity to speak to your motion.
Thank you. I do think for the sake of safety, and I had this conversation with Dr. Melton, we don't know what will happen in the next few weeks before the 8th, but we had one plan presented on the 13th, and then on July 23rd it was changed, and I made a statement at a board meeting that I just felt that it was imperative that the voters hear from the elected officials in support of Dr. Melton. And I certainly support her work. This is not questioning it, but it's actually, to me, putting the authority of the voters behind the plan so that voters feel they're listened to and that all of us as a board had some type of input to your decisions. And I feel like this motion, Mr. Cates, does allow us to move forward. So it's communicated to the public that is still our plan, and if their plan changes, we certainly should have evidence as to why, and we see the plan presented before it's enacted.
Questions? Ms. Gardner?
This isn't particularly a question, but I'm getting messages from people saying they can't get into the live stream. Is this being recorded for them to watch later? It is. Okay, so they'll have to watch it later?
It is. We're getting ready to restart the live stream. We're going to restart it.
And they'll just sort of see a recorded version of us, or they'll jump in?
Yeah, all of it's still recording if we stop and restart.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cates, I'm not sure if everyone heard that, especially those without the benefit of being in the room, so shall I summarize that, Mr. Cates, or would you
Please.
prefer? Ms. Garris, I understand you're going to do a restart for the virtual feed. Meanwhile, those that may be trying to gain access, this is being recorded so that when it's restarted, you'll have access from this point forward, but this will be posted to be inclusive from the start time up until this point, as well as the duration of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Cates, for that point of information for the record.
Mr. Gant had raised his hand. I recognize Mr. Gant. And Mr. Gant, you're muted.
Mr. Cates, I wanted to just ask you, explain the motion to me that Ms. Hammond made. I couldn't quite hear it. When you get to the end of the discussion, I'd like to hear it summarized, if you will. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You want it? You want to read it?
Mr. Lovelace?
I seconded the motion because I want to discuss the issue at hand. I feel like, we as a board haven't been able to really discuss this. I think that we should take the time tonight because we have people that are really, we need to talk about this. And I know we've got some things on the agenda down there that I didn't intend to have on the agenda at the time. I'm going to read you something from Dr. Melton that she wrote me back in November 15th, 2019, or thereabouts, I guess it is about that time. But board members, Mr. Lovelace requested information attached. If you will notice, we're preparing times that Mr. Neal and others will be available in December to answer questions. If it is the will of the board, we can schedule a workshop so that we can attend together and we can have groups of 3 or smaller meet. Customary to our habits, I've blind copied everyone so that there isn't an accusation that a virtual meeting was conducted via email. I've copied Mr. Neal to ensure everyone has access to the email. Enjoy your weekend ahead. But what this was about was I asked for a meeting to discuss basically the way we do business and the way our construction is handled and so forth.
Mr. Lovelace, can you
And I
speak to
wanted
the
to-
motion on the floor? That is.
Yeah,
you're
this
speaking
is
to
the
a
motion on the
upcoming
floor
agenda
because I
item.
wanted to be able to discuss what, tonight, what Ms. Hammond has put out here. I'm not necessarily in favor one way or the other, but I want to be able to discuss and understand as a board. And that's where we need to spend our time tonight. We need to spend our time with our public and talk to them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Lovelace, did you have a question, or was there
No,
a
I
part of
was-
that discussion?
I was just speaking in favor of what Ms. Hammond put on the floor.
Is there another question concerning the motion? Mr. White?
I couldn't hear her motion exactly what it was. Can you
I'll
repeat it?
restate it. I move that we direct the superintendent to move forward with the reentry plan presented on July 23rd, which provided for face-to-face 5 days a week on October the 8th. Furthermore, if there is evidence of an increase in COVID numbers within Lexington County that may cause greater safety issues, a revision can be made to the board, but only after the evidence is presented, discussed, and approved by the entire board. Respectfully submitted, Jan Hammond.
May I tell you one thing? I left out, I did not write Richland, but I said Lexington and Richland. I just didn't have it written down. Thank you.
Mr. White.
Well, I mean, my basic comment is, that we're in the middle of a situation I know presents a lot of stress for families. There's a lot of importance with kids. There's a lot of stress with being at home with your kids when you should be at work or your kids should be socializing. But the reality is, when people run for the board, it's a very low standard. We have to basically be residents of the community, and we haven't been convicted of a felony in the last 15 years. That doesn't mean anybody sitting at this table has the experience or knowledge or insights to make a decision over what's best for your children in the middle of a pandemic. It requires not only considerations of health issues, but the coordination of how you manage the flow of students and these kids in these schools, combined with how you deal with the normal stressors you have in school, and then the stressors on top of that with the pandemic. Safety measures, and the normal contingencies you might have in a school if something were to happen, whether it's a fire or an act of terrorism, or the things we typically worry about and think about. But I'm going to be very honest, there's nobody at this table that's equipped to make this decision except the superintendent. And that's why we hire the superintendent. The superintendent has worked her way up, like everybody else who sits in that seat, by operating and managing schools and developing the experience and the insights into things none of us have. We're here for policy considerations. I think it's fine to discuss this, but it's not a plan the board should dictate. I think Dr. Melton should be coming to us and telling us what are the points and times that she thinks the best interest of everybody would be served. That includes the children, that includes the parents, that includes the teachers, that includes the staff. And that's just something that we don't have within our domain, and I think it's political for us to come in here and set a vote, and had this motion come up in July, I would have made the same point. But I think we need to let the people who have the skills, who have the experience, and who have basically the responsibility, because if it doesn't work or fail, it's Dr. Melton's responsibility, not the individual board members.
Are there others that would speak for or against the motion?
I'd like to rebut what he just said. Number one, nowhere in the motion do I say the board decides the plan. But I said it should be discussed, put before us, her evidence, so that we approve it. And number two, I totally disagree with you about the role of the board. If the role of the board is simply to always have no input to what a plan is in something as unprecedented as this pandemic, and the people that are worried about it, and economic, mental, academic, so many things go into this. And you are right about one thing. It's major on Dr. Melton. And we certainly need to have the board have her back if she's putting before us the right thing. So in this motion, Mr. White, and I do teach, and I'm doing the hybrid. I mean, I'm implementing it. And we've done a great job with the idea of it. But there are people that have expected what she told us, and she did, and it's your credit, Dr. Melton. I have no qualms with the way you handle your position. You simply told us the plan was October the 8th. I went along with it that night, Mr. White, because I think that it's best for kids to be in 5 days. That's just my one-person teacher. But I'm emotional about teaching.
That's
Okay,
fine.
now don't take my time because they clapped. I mean,
Ms. Hammond, do you have excuse me.
I want to finish my
Excuse me,
sentence.
you spoke for your motion. You made your motion. I gave you the first chance to speak to your motion, and now I've come back so you could speak to it again. I just want to recognize other board members if you'll wrap that part of it up.
Let me wrap
is what
it
I'm
with-
asking.
Let me wrap it with Mr. White being totally wrong, thinking that I'm saying the board decides the plan. I say we approve it. And if that's not what our job is, I don't know why we approve everything brought to us.
Ms. Hudson, I'm going to ask the audience, we have a lot, we recognize there are a lot of passions on both sides of that, and that's important. It's important to be a part of a community that is engaged. And many will begin to complain about the length of the meeting, and you're only adding to the length of the meeting. So please hold your applause, and I will be coming to public participation in just a moment. Ms. Hutchison.
I'm trying to understand, I think I misunderstood what the motion was, Ms. Hammond. You're asking us to approve the plan or change the plan, if you don't mind
I don't.
explaining.
And thank you, Ms. Hutchinson, for getting clarification. I am saying she's not brought anything to us since July 23rd, except saying by October 8th, we would open 5-day. We'd keep the virtual till the semester, but 5-day, because that was what the data showed, 60-something% wanted 5-day, okay, face-to-face. All I'm saying is to have her back, to approve it. We should vote on it when, have her move forward on the 8th, for the 8th to be the reopening, unless, at the, I didn't say the next meeting, but unless before the 8th, there is information on a rise in the COVID cases that she wants to bring us evidence why we should not open on the 8th. I want it to be approved. That's all I want. I want the board to vote on it. So my motion's being, I would like to see if the 7 people up here agree at some point when we have a plan of reentry, the board approved it.
Ms. Hutchison, did you have a further question or statement?
So, did you have a time frame for that, Ms. Hammond?
October 8th.
Is that when you're saying
So that's,
that?
I figured and I talked with Dr. Melton, if there was a change before that, we have one more meeting before the 8th, and she could bring us that evidence if she worried
So
about it.
you're thinking to bring it at the next meeting before October 8th?
Well, whenever, unless we needed a special call meeting, which probably on something this important, we should have had several call meetings.
Okay. Ma'am, yes,
Well,
ma'am.
that's all right. I don't have anything else.
Nikki's got
Ms.
her,
Go- Excuse me?
Nikki.
I was trying to recognize Ms. Gardner. Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
I totally agree with Ms. Hammond about wanting to just make sure that the school district knows, or it holds to what they originally had stated in the reentry. And the reason we're having to do this is because there's no trust, because it was changed without us knowing or understanding what was happening and able to have any input. And as parents, I'm a parent, so I get to say this. As a parent, I felt that my input was completely discarded. And I've had many people email me and say, who are for the virtual, and has said, thank you for the choices we've had. And I feel like as a hybrid parent, I wasn't given a choice. So that's why we're upset, and that's why we're trying I would like to support this particular motion, because I want there to be trust built again. I want the school district to know that we would like to go back to school, but if we can't, we want to know exactly why, and we want more than just numbers that didn't make any sense that were put up on the board a few minutes ago. So that is the point of the motion, and I support it.
Mr. Gant, did you have a question? I didn't want to leave you out of the loop there.
Mr. Cates, were you recognizing me?
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to hear the discussion. I'm hearing it pretty well. It sounds like an open-ended number that we would need to get to, and what Ms. Hammond's motion is talking about an approval. And what Dr. Harris has been working toward is about a 5% positivity rate. And I'd like to ask Ms. Hammond if that rate, positivity of 5%, could be at the point of discussion. Is that something, I didn't hear that number, but I know what the numbers Dr. Harris just showed us.
I'll see what you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Gant.
Ms. Hammond wants to.
Ms.
You want to
Hammond?
ask me, you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Well, I mean, I can't tell who I didn't know if you called on me, I'm sorry.
I did. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Gant, I did not put a number on it because I think it makes a difference within school districts. And I know that Richland County has that high amount, and a lot has to do with downtown and where Carolina is. I don't really want to put the 5% on it. I simply, I wondered about, and I know my math teachers at school told me you have to have a quantitative figure there, but I didn't know one. But I don't want to go with the 5% because I think if it's going down, I would be happy. So I don't know what I want to put on that. Dr. Melton, I will turn to you. Are you wanting it to be to the 5%, like Dr. Harris talked about is ideal?
Ms. Hammond and the board, for you all to know, the information that Dr. Harris presented is in alignment with DHEC information. That last update by my record is August the 17th. So the idea of 5% or less than 5% being considered low, and then 5.1 to 9.9 is medium, and then higher than 10% is considered to be high. So we're working, of course, with that information, but unfortunately, we've lost the zip code information. So now we're having to use new updated information that we can work with. So Dr. Harris is working with DHEC so that we can get the information specific to our community as best we can get it. So if we were to compare, Ms. Hammond, our previous health crisis of, I'll use the example of the flu. DHEC typically has looked at a 10% threshold, but with this situation, there's not going to be a hard fast from them as to what that may be. So we're looking to see operationally what can we manage and accommodate, and then when it comes to the requirements of social distancing and other implementation, how do we implement and operate in regards to that? One simple thing would be transportation. We did not set the transportation variables or parameters. The State Department of Education did. So our Director of Transportation, Mr. Wiseman, has served on committees to make sure that he had a chance to share his voice with that, of how that directly impacts School District 5. We can't necessarily change that. That is assigned to us from the Department of Education. If you look at this particular place where we are now of Irmo High School's cafeteria, DHEC explains, because this is a point of sale location, how we operate within this kind of space. So are we going to have meals delivered to students in classrooms to have their breakfast and lunch? That's being worked on to include breakfast and lunch. Do we have spaces, depending on the number of students to be on campus, that we can actually continue a cafeteria experience the way we've done last week, the first 4 days? This, of course, is our first full week of operation. So, Ms. Hammond, to answer your question, as far as quantifiable information, there are so many moving variables here. Ideally, I would love to say, as a SMART goal-driven person, it'd be X%. But based on the things that we're managing as far as variables, it's very difficult, like you, when you drafted it, how do you come up with that manageable number when that one specific information may change the whole spectrum? If we were to have bus drivers become ill, how do we transport students with a fleet of buses? If we have enough school nurses become ill, how do we operate a clinic in every school of 23 schools? If we have an admin team sit down and have a meeting to do their planning in a situation like we're experiencing now, and that admin team gets ill, we can manage that as a district. But the more it spreads, I hesitate to say a specific number. We have to look at spread rates. We have to look at how we're managing things. It has been my plan to bring to you all the next board meeting, the 28th of September, the recommendation, because that does take time for our guidance directors, all the scheduling changes that they and their teams have to do, all the staff involved with schedule shifts. We've got to give them ample time to get prepared.
Dr. Melton, for clarity, the county by county, the zip code data was not lost by the district. It's not being recorded or provided by DHEC.
In previous updates to the board, Dr. Harris has reported by zip codes how he has been monitoring that information. Of course, that has changed. Dr. Harris, could you come and share with everyone to make sure there's clarity regarding how the information you've reported this evening with my report, how you were able to measure that?
To specifically answer your question, Mr. Cates, you're absolutely right. The information relative to zip code is not something in which District 5 has opted to exclude. It is information specific to what DHEC has opted to exclude from its reporting. So basically what we have at this particular time is county data as well as school and district data based on employees and students who have contracted or who have become positive with the coronavirus. There is no longer, and we've had opportunity to speak directly with representatives from DHEC to inquire about the zip code data, because that is something, obviously, that we wanted to continue to report and to share and to use as a metric to make determinations and decisions that we would discuss and share with the larger community. But that is no longer available as it is. Now, whether or not that's going to come back next week or next month, I don't know that. What I do know is that over the past 2 weeks in which this Tableau dashboard has been in place, it has not been available. And so therefore tonight, the information that I attempted to share is specific to what DHEC's website has to say regarding positive cases in both Lexington and Richland County for the periods in which I identified.
Thank you. Ms. Hutchison.
Thank you. I know that we have a lot of people in the audience who are supporting the 5-day, and I appreciate that. But I also just want to point out, and I know the rest of the board members got the same emails. We were bombarded today with emails from people supporting 5-day, but also from people who were basically pleading for virtual. I think they were fearing that we would make a decision tonight to go to 5-day. Excuse me, I'm talking. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear that there are split differences. It unfortunately is a community that is split. As Dr. Melton and several other, Mr. White added, this is difficult for everyone. It is just absolutely difficult, and I feel for the families. I recognize the struggles that they're having. I feel for the students. No one wishes this, but I believe that Dr. Melton and the team that she has assembled to look at all the variables, and she mentioned that already, so I won't waste time to go over that they are best qualified. It should not be a popularity contest as far as the loudest voices. Say we get the loudest voices for X, so that the board members say, well, everyone's feeling like this, so maybe we should choose that method of delivery. I don't think that's the wisest thing. We need to listen to the experts that are giving us the data. Our desire has always been to protect the students, their families, our staff, and our teachers. And I think that we should continue doing that. That was pre-COVID. We've always had the safety of our faculty, staff, and students at the forefront, and it will continue to be so, especially in this pandemic. So I hope that everyone will understand that this should not be a popularity vote, but it should instead be a vote based on data. Our superintendent, as was mentioned earlier, has been given the responsibility to administer the school district. The board is responsible, and I will read from Board Policy BDD, Board Superintendent Relationship. It says the board will do the following: select a competent, established educational leader as superintendent and support that person in the discharge of assigned duties. The superintendent will do the following: administer effectively and provide the professional educational leadership necessary. All individuals employed by the board are responsible directly or indirectly to the superintendent. It goes on. There's a full sheet of what the board will do and what the superintendent to do. And it says at the top, the board holds the superintendent responsible for the administration of its policies, the execution of board decisions, the operation of internal machinery designed to serve the school program. That's exactly what we have tasked the superintendent to do, and I fully support that the board has the right to ask questions. No one's voice has been stopped. There can always be questions asked during these meetings. If you have specific questions, I'm sure that Dr. Melton will take your phone call if you have specific questions. No one has lost their voice, and I support the superintendent and her educational professionals to make the best decision to protect the safety of our students, our teachers, and our staff and their families. Thank you.
Nikki?
Ms. Gardner.
First of all, I just want to say that I think, because I've done a lot of research about schools and children and reentry, and there's many countries that are saying that this doesn't affect schools or reentries. There are school districts across the state who are moving towards reentry, and some are already there. And we have across the country, they are too. So we have lots of resources. We won't be the first. We definitely won't be the first, and we can follow the lead. But the accusation that we're not using data on what we want for our children is actually wrong. We're just using a different data set. And I want to appreciate the fact that certain data sets are different for certain different demographics. I'm not sure why we need to look at a number of a 10% or 27% positive when how many of those are children? That's what I want to look at. How many of those are children and teachers? How many people are we really affecting? When in fact we might be more affecting them there are lots of other aspects than the things that they could get. They can get mental illness, they can get depressed, they can get anxiety. There's lots of things they're going to get and that they have and are getting at home that we could remedy if we would go to school and put the kids back in an environment where they can learn and grow. And but that just to accuse us that we're not following the science, I'm so frustrated by that statement because I have science too that proves it. The Pediatric
Right.
Association 2 months ago came out saying that we should send our kids back to school. We're told repeatedly, you can Google it. Should we send our kids back to school? What's the COVID for kids? Whatever. And the first 5 articles you get are, it doesn't affect them the same way. It doesn't transmit the same way as the flu. We shouldn't be worried about it like we are the flu in children. So I'm okay with having a number that's going to be about reentry, but I'd like to be focused on children. And I understand that involves teachers, but if the children aren't transmitting it, the teachers shouldn't be worried because there's plenty of mitigating factors in our schools. We are doing a phenomenal job. Look at this. Everywhere, they are doing a phenomenal job. They can do it. I have faith they can, but we need to move in that direction. We can't move backwards. We're getting further and further behind. But I just wanted to say about reading what you said about our duties for the superintendent. We're supposed to support the discharge of her duties, and I want you to know that the reason we brought this motion forward is that we can't support her in what she's doing. So yes, this is our job, is to make this motion. And number 2, we're asking her to be responsible to us. That's what I'm asking. That's what you just read. I'm just supporting that. She needs to be responsible to us. And lastly, it says the machinery designed to support the program. I agree with that 100%, but this is a program change, not the machinery behind it. Yep. So those are my thoughts. So I just took what you said and turned it around, and I did the same thing with the data. Do you see the problem that we're in by taking clear, like standing up like this? And so I think, in my opinion, we do have to do what the majority wants. I think we're mandated to do that. As public officials, we have to listen to the public. We have to do that.
That's right.
So I disagree that we shouldn't do what the majority wants. I think the problem is, because we've gotten so many emails, is that I really don't know what the majority wants. I would love to say that I knew, but from my perspective, I have no idea, and I wish we would do a survey to find out.
Yes. All right.
Was that, when did you conclude? I'm sorry. Are there others? Mr. Lovelace.
Yes, I just wanted to say that my interpretation is that by discussing these things, which we should have been doing all along, that in no way means that we don't support our superintendent. And if I'm wrong about that, I'll take umbrage. But I may be the low bar you were referring to, but I'm proud of it. And I don't see how discussing these things, and this what we've just done here, has been the most meaningful thing that we have done in 6 months. And I don't see how that in any way tells our superintendent that we don't support her. I think our superintendent deserves all of the credit in the world. She's tired, she's worked hard, she's done everything she's supposed to do, but sometimes it's just more than what you can do, and I think that all of us need to, talk about this and get behind it. And I don't understand why it's so hard to see that. I just don't.
Was there anyone else? Mr. White?
I'm happy to discuss. In fact, I'll tell you, I would like to see these kids go back 5 days face-to-face as soon as possible. But I think it's the wrong thing for us to politicize it and say that we're going to sit here as board members and vote when that occurs. And I guess, Dr. Melton, let's just vote right now. Let's go back tomorrow. What would that do to your operations and your staff? I mean,
That wasn't my motion. I didn't say go back tomorrow.
Read your motion again. You're giving her a deadline.
Excuse me.
She gave us October 8th.
Excuse me, you do not have the floor.
Can you read the motion again? Because I hear discussion, and then I hear that it has to go on a certain date unless we come back and change that.
No, I
I'll
didn't.
restate it
doesn't say
prior
that.
to our vote.
Exactly.
I'll restate it prior to the vote.
Please read it real loud for
I
Mr.
will
White.
restate it
Thank you.
prior to the vote. Ms. Gardner, I think I saw your hand a moment ago.
Go ahead and read, that's fine.
No, I will restate it prior to the vote. I'm not going to continue to read it over and over. I've read it once, she read it once.
She read it once, yes.
Ms. Gardner,
Actually, I'm done, that's fine.
I want to speak to the fact that there is, excuse me?
I said, be sure you write in Richland. I put Lexington. I just
So,
left
Ms.
it.
Hammond, I have the floor.
I
Please
know
allow
it.
me to
I know it.
speak without interruption,
Okay.
as I did you. It has been the stated goal from day one to return to face-to-face. There has never been a time when that was not the ideal scenario. Every educator I know, everyone that has contacted me, has said face-to-face is ideal. That is not in question. To say that the motion does not direct the work of the superintendent is a stretch. When the motion says, I move, we direct
Well,
the
finish the
superintendent. Ms.
furthermore.
Hammond, please. It says, I move, we direct the superintendent. And then it goes on to say that the board would approve anything that comes back. So how is that not, I can only read that as directing the work of the superintendent. I believe, I allowed the motion to be stated, seconded, so that we could have this discussion. The motion, in my opinion, is actually out of order because it doesn't appear on the agenda as an action item, but it's important to have the discussion. And we're going to vote on the motion, and that's important. But to suggest that it doesn't direct the work of the superintendent when the first sentence is, I move we would direct the superintendent, I can't see where that does not mean we direct the work of the superintendent. So our goal is to go 5 days. We want the superintendent to bring us the best plan. Our goal from the outset has been October 8th. I've heard nothing to suggest we're moving away from that, but we are going to be driven by the data that Dr. Harris and his team is gathering and bringing to us, and that is, that none of that has changed. I would not support the motion, not because I don't believe we need to go to 5 days, hopefully by October the 8th, ideally by October the 8th, but because it directs the work of the superintendent, and by policy and contract, the superintendent is the chief executive officer of the district. Ms. Hammond.
I only want to correct one thing. It does say direct that, and I can bring you many motions made over the last many years where it starts like that, and I'm not the one that wrote it. But you didn't finish saying direct to move forward. You notice, not do it for sure. Move forward on it. Like that's still our goal, so that the people know that. And then I didn't put unless, but I put furthermore, if anything changed in the numbers, and I didn't give an exact number, but if it went up greatly, that she would come to us with a new plan. Not our plan, but for the first time, because neither the July 13th nor the 23rd did we approve. And I'm sorry, Mr. Cates, I really think that we need to approve it. And that's all I'm saying. I didn't say change it, so I don't really like you to
Ms.
act
Hammond,
like
I
that's
don't
what I
believe I
said.
said anything about changing it. And to be clear, I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
did that completely.
I say vote. I know where the 4 votes are going and the 3, so go ahead.
So the original, I'll restate the motion. The thought that this is the first time we've had to discuss this, if a board member's voice has not been heard, it's because it's not been raised. At every meeting, we've had the opportunity to ask any questions that you wanted. There has not been a meeting where we have not allowed the board to ask questions. Ms. Gardner.
I want to say something about that. At 2 previous meetings, I specifically asked if our teachers were going to be asked to teach virtual and in the classroom, and I was told both times, under no circumstances were they going to, and we know that they all are. So my point to that is, I can ask questions all day, but when it changes, nobody tells me, even though that was very important to me. And so I should have been, as a board, we should have come forward and said, wait, I know that this was important to you guys because it was asked at 2 different meetings by you, Ms. Gardner, but it had to change because we couldn't make it work. And that's fine, I understand that, but that's how I feel about every change that's been made. It's been without our oversight and without even coming to us. We might have resources that can help. Just like the whole bus issue, I personally, in the area that I live in, I have like 6 buses coming down to my cul-de-sac every single day. And if all it took for us to go back face-to-face was that my child couldn't ride the bus because it was full, I would drive, and you know what? The whole community would step up. So make there a limit to how many are on the bus, and then let us decide who gets to be on the bus if that's the only thing holding us back. And I just want to clarify one more thing. The agenda does say number 8, superintendent's report, action is necessary, and I think that does mean we're allowed to make motions during the superintendent's
Thank you,
report.
Ms.
The motion before the board. I move we direct the superintendent to move forward with the reentry plan presented on July 23rd, which provided for face-to-face 5 days a week on October 8th. Furthermore, if there is evidence of an increase in COVID numbers within Lexington and Richland County that may cause greater safety issues, a revision can be made to the board, but only after the evidence is presented, discussed, and approved by the entire board. Submitted by Ms. Jan Hammond. It's been motioned, it's been seconded. Mr. Gant, were you able to hear that? Just nod at me. If you could, you don't have to. I just want to make sure, Mr. Gant, you were able to hear the motion. Thank you. We've had a second. We've had ample discussion. As many as favor the motion will raise their hand. As many as oppose the motion will raise their hand. As many as oppose the motion. And Mr. Gant has raised his hand. The motion fails.
Mr. Cates,
Yes, sir.
can I make a motion?
Hopefully that it's germane and part of this discussion.
Yeah, well, I would like to make a motion that we support moving to 5-day face-to-face as soon as possible, and we encourage the superintendent to work to move towards 5-day face-to-face on October 8th as the original target, or as soon as she deems it safe to do so.
State that again, please.
That I make a motion that we support moving to 5-day face-to-face as soon as possible, and we encourage the superintendent to work towards moving to 5-day face-to-face on October 8th, as earlier indicated, as long as she, let me fix that, on October 8th, or when she deems it to be safe to do so.
The motion has been stated. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Hammond seconds. Mr. White, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, embrace the fact that people are saying we want to move to 5-day face-to-face. We all agree with that. Nobody disagrees with that. The point is, who's going to make the decision whether it's safe or not and whether it can be done, and it's our superintendent. And so I've embodied that. There's no directive here. It's open-ended. There's an indication that we originally wanted to go on October 8th, but it's going to be provided that she says that it's safe to do so. And if not, that it may be a later date.
Thank you.
Mr. White, can I ask him a question?
Hold on, Mr. Lovelace said his.
Yeah, I just wanted on that, the superintendent has stated to us that, that only the switchover points between the methods of instruction would be on the quarter for the elementary schools and at the semester for the secondary schools. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. We were looking for the first quarter for elementary because of their developmental learning, and then secondary to be a semester because of the courses that we set up by teacher assignment.
So are those dates that they're putting out there, are those the ones that correspond with the quarter? Because I know we started late, and I'm just, not sure when that is. That's
Yes,
what-
sir. We reset that October 8th to be in alignment with the new board-approved calendar. Yes, sir.
So then those are the dates that a switchover could occur with the least, how long would it take us to get prepared for that? I mean, if we, don't we have to do some preparation before we just go back?
Yes, sir. We've been working on that. Our first effort, of course, was to get ready for a reopening or reentry last Tuesday, but we've been working towards how we can flip schedules from how secondary students are currently scheduled with a 5-day back to a 5-day of face-to-face model to come back. Of course, elementary scheduling is much different. Students are already scheduled for elementary classes, but it's the secondary piece that would be one of the challenges. But our registrars, APIs, Office of Accountability under Dr. Harris' supervision, they've all been working towards what that could look like. The transportation piece of things, Mr. Wiseman's been working on that. Mr. Beambo, of course, has been working on solutions and the places that Mr. Cannon has given to him that square footage-wise may not be able to accommodate the number of students that have chosen. We, of course, have been informed by families, some of whom have chosen hybrid, that if we were to go back face-to-face, they would ask to change to virtual, which then has another effect of our scheduling of how many students we need to have on site. So the numbers could lower depending on that particular families, or the number may increase from families that would like to come out of 5 to go back face-to-face. So there's some data there that would be likely changed depending on the models that we implement and the dates of which we start.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hammond.
I had a question for Mr. White's motion. That does the same thing I wanted, except it doesn't add board approval.
Ms. Hammond, it does not direct the work of the
It doesn't direct. It puts it at her discretion where it should be.
I think it should be her plan that's presented and we approve it. So I can't support unless you add that to it, but I'd really like it a lot if you'd add that to it.
Are there other questions? Anybody else speak to the motion? Ms. Gardner.
I think, I feel like we're arguing over semantics here because we do approve her goals, we approve her priorities, so I don't know why we can't approve a program change. I think it's perfectly acceptable, and I would like to make the motion that we amend the motion to include the words with board approval.
I second that.
Any discussion on the amendment? As many as favor the amendment will raise their hand. As many as oppose the amendment will raise their hand. Mr. Gantz raised his hand as well. I'm going to ask the audience once again to just respect the process. I get it. I get the emotion. I appreciate the emotion. But please respect the process so that we don't have to continue to stop the meeting. And also hope that you will model the behavior for us. Thank you. So the amendment is failed. Are there other questions about Mr. White's motion? Mr. White, will you restate your motion, please? And Ms. Strange, just make sure, I want to make sure if you'll just give me a cue that you have captured that motion. Mr. White.
That we support moving to 5-day face-to-face as soon as possible, and we encourage the superintendent to continue to work to move towards the 5-day face-to-face target of October 8th or such other date as she deems it safe to do so.
The motion has been made, second, and discussed. As many as favor the motion will raise their hand. Mr. Gann has raised his hand. If you're opposed to the motion, will you raise your hand? Thank you. The motion passes. Any other discussion? Any other questions of the superintendent as we conclude the superintendent's report. Dr. Melton, was there anything further on your, from your report?
No, sir, that concludes my report.
Yes, ma'am.